And before I welcome up our next group, because it's a group, it's not just an individual, you're all in for a treat, I just want to make a few comments. Is that one, please remember that we do have a promo discount going with our Edmodo shop. And so if you go to shop.edmodo.com, either today or tomorrow, you'll receive a 10% discount on any swag. Remember, Vivian talked about that earlier. Everybody wants, maybe not this shirt, but everybody wants those shirts, those hoodies, those mugs, the capes. Yes, yes. Rashina's got all of her swag, so, maybe we'll have her sport that later. And then the other thing I want to mention, Rashina, you talked about how, getting that buy-in and convincing your staff to use Edmodo. And I think one of the ways, I'll put another shameless plug in for our teach-ups that are coming up, our new back-to-school initiative, where we're really encouraging, it's Edmodo Envoys. And that's really an opportunity for Edmodo to help you to foster those local communities as strong and as powerful as our global community is. So stay tuned for more on that. Edmodo will be not only helping to promote the events for you. Remember, these are teach-ups. These are teacher meetups. But then we'll also, be providing you with, yet again, more swag. So if you want swag, go to the shop at a discount. And if you want swag to share with your teachers, email teachups@edmodo.com. Thank you all. All right, we're going to switch spots here for a second. And while we are waiting for our next group to come up, I also want to talk a little bit more about the Teacher Leader Network that Rashina and a few others of us have been part of. Now, I'm discussing this for two reasons. Is one, because this is an opportunity for those of you who really love Edmodo and also want to find new ways to collaborate with teachers who are as passionate as you are. This has been a tight-knit community that has grown over the past few years. You heard Vibhu and Vade discuss it this morning, and it's been valuable going forward. The other reason I'm mentioning this Teacher Leader Network now is because our panel moderator, who I'm about to introduce in a moment, Sandra McConnell, is actually part of the Teacher Leader Network herself. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our panel. We're going to switch gears, and we've got 4 panelists here, so I'd like to invite up Sandra McConnell, who is an ambassador, a certified trainer, an ed tech enthusiast, and a consultant for Edmodo. So welcome up.
Thank you. Thank you. So welcome to the panel discussion on supporting the whole child and the whole student. We are going to start with some brief introductions from each of the panel members, including their name, their role, their grades, and where they're from, some unique aspects of their environment and the unique characteristics of your students, and finally, just a short statement as to how you've been able to educate the whole child using Edmodo and the unique elements of that program. Just so for your information in the audience, their presentations are online in the topic, so when you want more detail about what they're going to talk about, it's there. So even though I'm keeping them to a very short leash today, so we can hear all your voices, there is more information out there. So Kathleen, let's go ahead and start with you.
Great. Hello, everyone. I'm Kathleen Dunne, and I've been working with adolescents for 3 decades now. The last 28 years, I've been a counselor in a 7th and 8th grade middle school, the Oceanside Middle School. It's a rather large population on one of the small communities on the South Shore of Long Island, middle class, and that's in New York. As a counselor there, we've had the opportunity to work with all of our students. They see us on a weekly basis in a small group setting, and in that arena, we use Edmodo in a very traditional way. But 2 years ago, I was approached and I was asked if I would begin a gay-straight alliance in our middle school. At the time, we were one of only 5 in our county that had a gay-straight alliance for middle school students. And I thought it would be very, very important to not only have a club that was very active in the school, very visible, did a lot of equity-type projects, but I also was very concerned that we find a way to create community. As we know, if you belong to any other minority community, chances are, if you go home after a bad day, you have someone to talk to, someone who can relate to your experience. I know that students who identify in the sexual minority don't always have that luxury. So they may go home and not even be able to be themselves. So we thought it was really, really important to find a way to connect many students, not just the ones who came to our meetings. And so that's where Edmodo came in, and we've used it as a platform. And honestly, it has surpassed anything we ever imagined. The kids have connected with each other. They're supportive. It's been a wonderful tool, and that's why I'm here today.
Thank you. Alexander.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Alexander Duque. I come from Colombia, and I work at an institution. There is a binational center, and well, my experience with Edmodo basically started since we started working with public schools in my country, and very low social levels of the community. And we started working basically at a school called Atanasio Girardot, in which the students only knew basically violence, theft, and drugs. So that's all they knew basically, because some of the students actually came to school, but they didn't have actually the opportunity to have breakfast or even lunch or actually a meal during the day. So basically, Edmodo helped us just reach this community, these students, as well as their teachers and the parents, and it was great because it was kind of like a lifesaver for them. Actually, what I did with Edmodo was I bring back their dreams, hopes, and expectations for life, and I actually very glad to say that some of the students right now made it into university, into very technological programs and even engineering. So I'm very glad to tell you that basically Edmodo has changed their lives, and it has helped me just reach these guys and then flip their lives forever.
Great, thank you. Scott.
Good afternoon. I'm Scott Meile, born in Philadelphia but raised in New Jersey, right in between Atlantic City and New Jersey. Atlantic City and Mays Landing is the capital of Atlantic County. And in Atlantic County, we have the highest foreclosure rate in the entire country today. Our community is going through a huge transition. There's just a lot of families that are being misplaced, and there's a lot of people that are, or a lot of my students or the kids in our class that don't know what's going on. And it's all just happened recently. So what Edmodo has become in our classroom is, Edmodo is like our living room. It's our chance to sit there every day and experience things together. And because it's so embedded in our daily routines, the kids are taking their socks off. They're relaxing. They're talking to us. They're expressing things to me that I don't think I ever would have discovered by standing by the front door and saying, "How was your day?" They have just made it a point each and every day to relay something to us. And though there's so many wonderful features, the simplest one is that it's just connected us. And that's why I use Edmodo, and that's why we find it so successful in our classroom.
Great, thank you. And finally, Chassie.
Salam alaikum. My name is Chassie Selouane. I am from Dubai. I'm actually American, but I've been living in Dubai for the past 6 years. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice.
That won't happen.
But just like Scott said, this is exactly what I use Edmodo in my classroom. I work for Sharjah American International School. It's actually in Dubai. But the majority of my students, 96% of my students are ESL students. So all of my students are basically non-native students. What we've done with Edmodo is we've actually broken the walls of our classroom. My classroom has no walls anymore. I set up office hours with my students. And so virtual office hours every Wednesday from 7 to 9, I'm online. My students know they can get support from me. My students actually, it was originally for English, and we use trust in my classroom as the rules. And what trust is tolerance, respect, responsibility, uniqueness, success, and teamwork. And everything we do has to show trust. And it really grew into this, it holistically grew into like a family and a community, and they stopped using it just for English. And, hey, I left my math book at school. Can you take a picture of this? And I think I'm a collaborative learning teacher. I'm a 21st century learning teacher. I use 21st century skills, the 4 C's. So I think the best thing for you to really know about what I do, take a look at the topic video. If you take a look at the topic video, it's my kids that are speaking about their experience. And I think that that actually will explain to you more about why I'm passionate about Edmodo, is to actually see the kids tell you in their own words and their self.
Great, thank you. So now I have a few questions for all of you, and kind of just share amongst yourselves and with our audience. You've all found really unique and inspiring ways to support the whole child, blending the personal touch with the digital connections, uniting high tech and that personal touch. In what ways did Edmodo make these connections different than they would have been if they were just in person?
Can I start? My kids are ESL students. So in person, they're going to talk to you, right? You're going to have the conversation. On Edmodo, what does it force them to do? Write, type. My kids' writing have improved because they have rules that they have to follow. And we've seen that their writing has just like skyrocketed. The kids that were in my class, and you'll see in the videos, some of them will say, my 6th graders this year, that are in 6th grade that I had in 5th grade last year, they're writing on an 8th grade level, and they're ESL students.
I just want to add, I think for me, since I'm a counselor, it's not really academic. I think that what I found is that the kids, we talk about when kids are being harassed in school that you have to look for the silent majority, you have to empower them. That's hard to do because those kids are terrified they're the only ones. And I found that on Edmodo, people could kind of peek and say, I agree with that. I'll help you out with that. I'll support that. Yeah, I'll show up and do that. And so for me, I'm not sure if face-to-face, if I'd asked the kids if they would help out, they would have been as brave, honestly, as they were, because they could communicate in this different platform.
Well, I also believe that what you guys are saying is 100% correct. But I think when you're using Edmodo and you're embedding it and making it such a part of your classroom that it becomes a much easier platform for them to communicate with you. And they're so used to social media. And they're constantly using social media. They Snapchat, they Facebook, they tweet, they do everything together. That Edmodo is just another avenue that they know is safe for the classroom. So when we get kids to volunteer things that they would not necessarily volunteer, where before I didn't think everybody would listen to them if they stood up in the middle of class and spoke it, or said it out loud, now kids are responding. And they're standing up from their chair or desk and they're looking out and they're being like, oh my gosh, I was there too, or I experienced the same thing. Great. So it's neat to see the two things blend together because that's what their daily lives are like.
I think it builds relationships.
Yeah. Alexander, did you have anything to add?
Well, as I said before, basically what I did with Edmodo was to teach these guys that there was something like actually outside, like the things they were living by the time, actually, violence, the theft, the drugs. And I actually basically started designing like a mini curriculum for them so they could actually know that English actually could be a way to achieve those dreams. And actually to make them come true for them. And as I told you, basically, some of them actually achieved like university level. So that's pretty good for me because actually if I helped improve lives of those kids, that was basically a great experience for me using Edmodo to like reach that part in their lives.
Great, thank you. We all know that students often take what we offer them and change it slightly to make it their own. And take it in a different direction. How did your students influence or steer or change your projects, and what were some of the challenges you faced with that? Kathleen?
I just want to say quickly, when I first started the Edmodo group, I didn't know where it was going to go, and I think that's exactly what happened. I had a young lady, it was right before the holidays, and I guess for kids who are going home to happy situations, that's a great time, but if you're not so sure how it's going to go at home, you're not so thrilled, and she created an inspiration week. I didn't do it. She posted. She goes, Monday, I want you to post a person that inspires you. And Tuesday, we're going to post a song that inspires us. And she completely took in a direction I hadn't anticipated.
It's adorable.
Awesome.
All right. No, well, basically for me and my students, I didn't plan this like to grow as it grew. But, well, my students did the whole job. And actually, I just designed like the layout for them, and they did the rest. Basically, the only thing I cared about is if they were going to have like a food or a meal during the day, and they didn't even care about English. But then after I came out with this idea of like having these tutorials with them and like teaching them like from scratch and stuff, they started improving, and they did the rest until up to the point that they actually asked their own teachers, their own homeroom teachers, to like use Edmodo even more in class and like spread it like around our community. So that was great.
And that was amazing about my classroom as well. Alex is just, there's no incentive for them to use it the way we use it in class. I didn't say like, hey, there's an A connected if you use Edmodo every day. It was, what are you thankful for? And then the kids would write things they're thankful for. And then we would collect them and we would just put them together and we just did it every day. And it, as a teacher who's been doing this for 12 years, it straightened me out because now I know I have to be the person who models it. And I can't just say, all right, you guys do all the work. I'm going to hang back here, have a Diet Coke, and relax. I'm going to have to jump in there with you. And I had to think every single day, what am I thankful for? And the kids would just respond, and we build, and there was no incentive. There was just them wanting to do it and them asking me when I'm not in school and I'm at home, like, where are the thank yous? What are you doing? Why are you not here today? I'm like, all right, I got you. I'll take care of it.
That actually happened to me too. Something I was actually sick about 2 years ago. I had a blood infection and ended up in ICU and was in the hospital for about 3 weeks. And I was very concerned. I was like, oh no, what am I going to do? And so I'm from my hospital bed posting, work on this, work on this, work on this. Now, my kids were 5th graders. You wouldn't expect, they had a substitute every day, right, for 3 weeks. And my parallel teacher only had a free period once a week to go in, and that was on a Thursday. The first week she went in, she said, oh my God, Chassie, like your kids are like ahead of my kids. And then the next week she's like, they're doing really well. This is great. And then by the 3rd week when I came back, they missed nothing. They took control of their learning. And actually, that was when it changed Edmodo a little bit for me, how they changed it. Because then I realized, I'm going to give them their work for 2 weeks at a time. And I started setting it up 2 weeks at a time, putting an end deadline for them. They're the ones that came up with that from where I was absent. And so really, it became that my students were in control. And none of them, like Scott said, there was no additional incentive except, hey, if you didn't do it by the end of the 2 weeks, you wouldn't get credit. But I never had any late. They were on there. They were doing it. And it was because they wanted to. They were excited about it because they felt empowered.
Great. Thank you. We all good? Okay. So in your presentations that are on the topic, both Kathleen and Scott shared some statistics supporting the need for the fantastic work that you're doing. Do any of you, by any chance, have either that you can share with us today or in the topic, that been able to quantify the resulting impact of your programs? So you quantified the need. Is there some way, I know it's harder with these soft skills, right? But do you have anything that shows, yeah, it's working because?
I can just speak to the participation. We've done some activities in the building, and the number of students who participate has continued to grow. So I feel like that community is growing, that support network is growing. And, we're hoping actually to start a study. I'm going to start my doctorate soon. So we're going to work on a study to kind of quantify. I think if you make schools safe for any particular population, it becomes safer for everyone. And that's something we want to gather data on.
I look forward to your doctorate.
Thank you.
So do I. I look forward to it as well. What is hard right now is that we're in the middle of what is, I think, is almost an epidemic in our school district and across a lot of school districts. We're demanding our students, our kids, to work from the minute they walk in the building to the minute they walk out. And then they walk out the door and they're supposed to go to practice. They're supposed to do this. They're supposed to do that. And they're plugged in all the time, and there is no break. So I don't get a chance to unplug with them very often. Mm-hmm. And I want that to happen in class every day. And it might go against what some people in my, administration team might think is, the right thing to do. But I just feel like it's necessary that we need to look at our kids and say, whoa, like there's bigger things than middle school English.
Right.
There's other things that are going on besides Fahrenheit 451. Right.
Yeah.
And there's great messages in the stories we read, and we try to tie that back. But at the end of the day, we just I want my kids to be able to say they can come into class and tell me anything. And they know that even if they tell me something bad, I'm going to tell someone, but I'm going to make sure that they're safe. And that's what we try to do. Now, it's scary to me because we've had some really tragic events in the last couple of years where we've lost former students, and that's something that breaks my heart, like to see a student lose their life because they just couldn't handle the pressures and stresses of what's going on around them. You feel like you've done so many things wrong. So, like, how do we fix it? What can we do? How do we quantify it? And it's just really hard to do right now because I don't know where to turn. I'm not as accomplished as some of the people that are here at Edmodocon and some of the wonderful people I've met, but it's something I would love to know and I would love to learn.
I think
well, that actually leads me to my next question. How do you? I can see where I would get super involved with these kids and want to just take them all home with me until they become teenagers, and then I've done that. But how do you keep a balance in your life, both emotionally and also just physically with your time? And that question's to all of you. How do you keep it from really consuming you?
Having those hours, having a set time, and then the kids know that you're there for them at that set time. And to kind of touch on what Scott said a little bit, it's the relationship. I think you're doing the right thing. I think the most important thing is the building of the relationship. And that's why I use the trust concept in my classroom, because it goes across all cultural barriers and everything, because regardless of your religion or where you're from, we all need to have tolerance. We all need to have respect. We all need to have responsibility. We need to celebrate the uniqueness so that if you are different, that you don't feel the need to do something drastic. And we all need to work together as a team. So having those boundaries, though, of saying, okay, you know what, maybe one night a week or 2 nights a week. And then, now, I'm not going to lie, I do pop in on the app sometimes and check. But the kids know at least that set time on that Wednesday from 7 to 9, they can check in with Miss Chassie.
I'm actually, Chassie, that's wonderful. Like, you have set hours. I wish I could do that. I just literally, it's like Snapchat. To me, I'm just always constantly checking it. And it might be the same kid asking me the same 10 questions that I find silly, but I am just constantly checking the app, constantly looking at the class, constantly just evaluating it. If I get a notification from Facebook, I look at it. I wish I could unplug, but if I'm in the middle of a game and I coach sports and I'm at halftime of a game and we're down 10, I'll take a look at the app to see if somebody needs any help. And often they don't.
Right.
But then there's some awesome opportunities where they do, and I can be like, shut up, we're losing, but I'll get back to you in a half hour, just so they know I'm there for them.
Yeah.
Right.
So I like being plugged into them all the time, and I do have balance because I have a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old chasing me around the house.
There you go.
But it's just neat that it's always there and they're always accessible to me.
Yeah, great.
All right. Well, emotionally, basically for me, it's like impossible not to get involved with my students because basically your students notice like how involved you are, how committed you are to them by the way you talk to them or like the attitude you take in the classroom. So basically for me, as I love teaching and basically I arrive to the classroom always with the same attitude, like with the same great attitude to teach them and to give all the best I have for them. And Edmodo just helped me make it easy for all the students, and it's just worked for me in a way that they can be also empowered to their learning. So for me there's just the attitudes that I have for them, and then Edmodo does the rest.
Alexander said something that's really important about his attitude. I have a catchphrase, and it's actually on my wall in my office. I've painted it on my wall, and it's attitude is contagious. And people are like, contagious, really? Ugh. No, but contagious. If you've got a bad attitude, you can expect your kids to have a bad attitude. If you walk into that class room and you don't want to be in that classroom, your kids are not going to want to be in that classroom. So that's the first thing as an educator you have to keep in mind is you may be having the worst day of your life, but once you hit that door, and you walk through that door, you need to push that back and you need to try to find that joy somehow to be in that classroom. Because if you're having a bad day and you let it show, your kids. And kids respond to the feelings around them. And if they feel safe, if they feel loved, if they feel supported, then they're going to learn.
Great.
And they're going to excel.
Right, and I know working with educators, we learn in relationship. You're not going into teaching if you don't want that relationship. But I also know as a counselor, setting healthy boundaries is super important. They're good for everyone, not just for you as the educator, but they're good for kids to understand. They give people a sense of safety. So, it's very important to have those boundaries. And hopefully the goal is, again, resources, providing people. Anytime I see someone for counseling, my goal is to eventually not see them, to give them what they need so they're done and they're finished and move on.
Right.
And I think that's a bit of what we do also with kids. My kids have posted wonderful resources. So that's
You guys are totally setting me up for my next questions. It's as if we had rehearsed this. Many of the children you're working with are at risk. I mean, you've talked about situations with kids being hurt or dying. They haven't in their lives had necessarily the safest, most trusting relationships. How do you reach out to these kids so that they know the community that you're providing with Edmodo and your clubs is a safe place for them?
I think, you have to vet what goes up as well, and I think that's why I like Edmodo so much. It's a platform that you can monitor. I've had students post things, this is the person you should talk to if you're having a problem, and it's no one I've heard of, and I don't know the organization, so I'll make it a point of making it clear when I post things where it comes from. So it's a great way to also inform people about resources.
Great.
Well, basically, as Scott mentioned before, that he's kind of like available for the students and stuff, like in social platforms and stuff, so I also make myself available, like anytime they want, actually. So if they need me, I'm gonna be there for them, like father if they want, because most of them actually that didn't have a father, or like they get abandoned as well. So I make myself available like at any time as possible.
I do the same thing. I think for me, I'm in a unique situation. I'll never forget. Probably the most heart-wrenching thing is when the war in Syria started. I had a little boy that we had came back for after summer vacation, and he had been in Syria with his family, and he came up to me and he just grabbed me and he hugged me and he was crying, and I'm like, what's wrong? And he said, oh, Miss Chassie, I'm so happy to see you. He said, this summer I went home and the bombs were going off, and he said my cousin went to the souk and actually got killed, and I just wanted to come back. And he said, when I got back to Dubai, when I got off the plane, I kissed the ground. And he said, and I'm so happy to see you. He said, because I thought this summer that I might not see you again. And so, you may think that, I live in Dubai and that these kids don't maybe have as much problems as some areas, but we have issues as well. So it's just making them feel safe, making them feel comfortable, knowing that you're there and you'll be there with them,
Sandra, the definition of at risk for me in my head right now is Eugene. Eugene was a rough student, didn't do academically well, and his friends would laugh at him when he did his wrote his thank yous on Edmodo and used Edmodo each day. They literally laughed at him. And I laughed at him too, because he's not that kind of kid. He's very tough. He lives with his grandparents. And I coached soccer at high school. Eugene's an 8th grader. Eugene followed me, never playing soccer a day in his life, followed me to high school to play soccer. He is literally the worst soccer player of all time. But he just enjoys being around there because there was something built in that classroom for him that he trusts me and looks at me as somebody that he can go to. And I'll just leave it at this. There was one time Eugene was walking away from practice while I was driving to it, and I thought it was weird. I was like, where could he possibly go? And I stopped. He goes, well, I have to go to the mall because my friends are going to get in a fight. And Eugene, get in the car. You're going to practice. And he just jumps in the car with Coach, which, if anybody at school is seeing this, I didn't pick him up. It's not me. But he hopped in the car and went the block back to the field. And those are the things that I got from it. It was like he trusted me enough to hop in the car and come to practice and, leave his friend, which I don't think he was in that much danger anyway, but those are the things you don't want to guess.
That's beautiful. So all 4 of you have done really amazing things. You got to check out the topic. There's really cool things that they're doing to build that positive climate. And it's so inspirational, and I'm sure a lot of educators like myself want to get started with a similar program. How would you recommend we get started to help our program and our students succeed?
Well, I'll start this time.
Go for it.
I'm in the middle. I got to start every once in a while. What I came to realize after teaching, and I was talking with a couple of the people on the different speakers, 7 or 8 years of teaching, I started to really question, can I do this? This is going to be 30 years, the rest of my life. I'm settling in here. This is 7 years. I'm in my 30s. I have a kid. This is it. And I just said to myself, I have to establish some positive routines in my classroom. There's got to be something every day that I can hang my hat on that is not academic related, because that's constantly evolving. That's not something, it's not a new app, it's not a new site. I need something where I can connect with my kids every day in a positive routine. And I made 2 changes. 1, I decided to get up every day before work and exercise instead of after work. And 2, I came up with the thank you wall and the thank yous that we completed every day. And I know it sounds silly, like saying thank you for the wonderful dinner at Chili's last night, but it really straightened me out, and it put things into perspective of what was important. So I think the first thing a teacher can do is come up with some sort of positive routine that you can do every single day with your kids, whether you're there or not. And second, just stick to it. It's going to take time, and it's going to be something the kids might not gravitate towards right away, but they will eventually get there.
Yeah, the routine. I think that's making something routine, because kids like something they can count on. That's what makes them feel safe. It can be depended on, and they can count on it. And if they know that this is the plan, and you may change the activities throughout the time, but my kids know that 2 weeks, that they have the 2-week time frame. They have to get it done at that time. And there were certain things that were standard. We had 3 discussion questions that they had to complete, and then they had to comment on their peers' discussion questions. They knew this was a requirement, and it was routine. It became, like you said, routine. It's something, and they actually started to look forward to, writing the discussion questions. And then they actually started submitting, hey, Miss Chassie, could we actually do this discussion question? Or, we learned about this. Could we research this a little further as a discussion question? So, the routine is very important.
Great.
Well, for me, there's nothing but just one word, actually, and it's perseverance. Yes, so you should never stop, actually, to teach these kids with all the love and attitude you have, because, well, sometimes, they have problems. They even have, they didn't have even breakfast, lunch, or whatever meal during the day. But basically, what you need to try to do with these kids is to teach them that there's something out there for them, waiting for them, and they can reach actually.
And I know for me, it was a question of how to get started and how to invite people in. I thought it was really important to invite in administrators and teachers so the kids saw it was kind of not just them, that a lot of people are in this together and we all believe in the same things. And then I also had to get the group code out to people. That was a big deal. That first club fair, I didn't know what the reaction was going to be. We had the table set up. I have 2 great kids standing there as all the 7th graders walk throughout the day and look at all the clubs. So we had a giveaway, something everyone walked away with the group code on it. So that if you were too scared to put your name on the sheet saying you wanted to come to the club, you still had it in your pocket. And I'm up to almost 90 people in the group, the Edmodo group right now. So that's important too. But it's kind of finding ways, I know for at least my case, to get the number out there and get the engagement.
Great. So what inspired you to start your projects?
I mean, mine's kind of a sad story, I guess. Being in the mental health profession and reading statistics, you have to go to countless workshops on suicide and depression, and then you go to other workshops where they talk about kids in the sexual minority and how they're at risk, but no one ever talks about both at the same time, and yet they account for the majority of kids who try to kill themselves in high school. They're only about 10% of the population, but they're 40% of the kids living in shelters. So how can you look at those numbers and not do something? And that's kind of where I started.
Where I started was one of my college suite mates. Hi, Adrian. She said, hey, I want to hook my 5th grade class up with your 5th grade class. Let's do pen pals. Well, the Meile doesn't necessarily work overseas the way that the Meile works here. So I said, they may only get 1 letter in the course of a whole year. And I said, let's set up a Facebook group. and her district where she worked would not allow her to have a Facebook group. They said, hey, there's a new thing called Edmodo, why don't you try it? And so she told me about Edmodo, and we set up like this global classroom that we were going to try to share, and it actually never went anywhere. She wasn't able to like get it started and get the permission to start it. And so I was like, well, you know, I signed up for Edmodo. Let's just rock and roll with it and figure out what to do with it. And so it just it was a very holistic thing. It just grew from logging in, I guess.
Alexander, how about you?
Well, basically it all started like when one of my students told me a story of a partner, of a classmate basically, that died because of drugs. So, and I say, well, this needs to change, of course, and a lot for them, because there's no way. The only thing that they can know is this. Yes, is death, drugs, theft, and violence. And so they actually had access to technology where I live, but their teachers never actually took them to a tech lab or like to work with tablets or stuff. And so they asked me, hey, teacher, why don't you teach us how to use these tools? Because we normally don't have access because our teachers don't teach us how to work. And then, of course, I started I first started working with Edmodo, and after I just started dusting a little bit like their old tablets and stuff, and then putting all the elements together to work with Edmodo in their tablets and computers.
Well, I think I kind of touched on it, but it was neat to see, and I'm more like I have to see it. It was like to see the tangible growth of it, where I had the list and like taking their thank yous they completed every day and putting them on a Google Doc and running it right through. And then at the end of the year, you sit there with a kid covered in sticky notes and 4 pages of thank yous for things that happened to them over the course of the year.
Great.
Was awesome, because then they see like, oh my God, I was thankful for that boyfriend I had in September and I hate him now. But it was from there in September to, an 8th grader in June. I don't know how many of you know 8th graders in June, but they are very sentimental. And as they get ready for high school, you could see the real gratitude in what they were saying. So it was just neat to see something in paper or something on the screen that was right in front of them. They see the growth that they went through over the course of the entire year.
Nice. Well, before we wrap this up, I just want to say how lovely it has been to listen to you guys, because I love Edmodo. Anybody who knows me knows that. I have been an Edmodo fan forever. And all the practical things that Edmodo does are awesome. I mean, I love being able to schedule my messages to my kids. I love all this stuff. But this is really why we're here. I mean, for me, that's what makes teaching my passion, because it's not just a job. And I want to thank you for so much for sharing your stories with us. And I do hope that you guys will join in the conversation on the topic. Do we have any questions or no time? Oh, question time. Yes, we have time for questions.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And also just want to thank you all for bringing such a human touch to not only to teaching but to Edmodo. And really, I have to say that I'm looking through some questions on here, and the entire Edmodo staff is going crazy. So they are ecstatic.
Is that a good thing?
It's
really
fantastic. No,
It must be.
a good thing. A couple questions here. There's some really poignant questions. One from Mark in Maryland asks, aren't there any legal issues with communicating with students about personal issues, and do you set boundaries about what can be discussed?
I know I've had to, and it's been a teachable moment, but over 2 years, I've probably only had to speak to 3 students about what they posted. In one case, it was a great video, but unfortunately, the person was so enthusiastic they were using a lot of language that wasn't okay for a middle school. So I had to ask them if they could find a different video of someone with the same feelings. Another time, I had to take something down because after the shootings in Orlando, someone posted a really vitriolic, horrible video that someone had made about their feelings about it. And then, of course, they were writing their response. And I had to say to the student, I don't want to give that other person any more airtime than they've already had. So there have been those moments. But other than that, because it's such a safe, monitored platform, and that's why I also invited others to be in on it with me, just so that others could help monitor what kids were posting.
And Kathleen, you nailed it. Like, I've had kids write things that are completely inappropriate, and I go on there and I fix it.
Yeah.
Make
You
it
can
something
edit, which is
very, very,
great.
very appropriate. And that's what's the safety of it is what
Yes.
I like. And,
Yes.
you know, it's always there to fix.
It's protected.
But, of course, there's legal issues, and the kids know I'm the biggest snitch in the building. So I'm going to tell
Yes.
if anything bad is going on, it's going to the next level up. As a classroom teacher, that's all we can do. We move to the next level.
I have the whole trust thing going on in my classroom. So that's like the foundation of everything. So if they know that if they violate that trust and they do something incorrect, because I set out very explicit rules at the beginning. So my kids know that if they do something that violates trust, they could actually lose Edmodo privileges. So they're going to go to read only for a couple days if they if they post something. They'll get deleted and they'll go to read only for a couple days. And they don't want to do that. They want to be involved in the conversations.
Thank you.
Well, my head teacher always actually told me not to trust students because they were kind of like part of a difficult community. But if you don't trust the students, then who are you going to trust when you teach? Then, so basically, I wouldn't expect like students like to be that polite when they actually post on Edmodo, but they did a great job actually with the posts and everything.
Nice.
Thank you all. Are there any questions in the audience?
Yeah, we have.
Yes, we do have one.
Hi. I'm wondering if Edmodo has enabled any of you to connect with other teachers, other classrooms regionally. For example, in Manizales, like, are there users in Bogota or Philly, if there's anybody, you know?
I don't want to connect with them.
Well, basically, it helped me a lot to connect with teachers around Colombia. Not necessarily Manizales or Bogota, like around the different cities in Colombia, because they started actually knowing what I was doing, because I actually started posting a lot to communities and stuff, so they started actually seeing and signing up and stuff, and asking me questions, and then how to connect with other teachers, if I had resources to help them and stuff. So basically we started building kind of like a very, very, very close community between us.
Great, thank you.
I'm an Edmodo ambassador and a certified trainer. So I actually recently set up a MENA for Middle East, North Africa region ambassador group, but it's also open to teachers, and it's in the so just if I'll share the code on the topic group if anybody is watching in the Middle East and wants to join our group.
I would be a little hesitant, just because I want our class to feel that safety. I haven't thought of it until you actually mentioned it, but I've always just was like, it's like we're a team. I don't know, maybe it's the Northeast part of me. Like, this is us. Like, this is about us together. But that's interesting. It's interesting that you bring that up, because I don't know if that would work. Like, would it be something we would be able to bring kids in from different areas just to get a better perspective? You want to see what the rest of the world's doing.
Yeah.
I'm actually thinking, after all the meetings we've had here, I've met so many people, and I'm a counselor, so I don't do an awful lot with Edmodo, but I've been asked to help with other schools that want to form GSAs, and I've been to conferences, and I've had networks, but I'm actually thinking this might be the easiest platform for sharing information and resources and materials.
That's great. And Alexander, you spoke about some of the community that in Colombia, and there's actually a question from Ricardo, who I believe is from Colombia, and I'll tell you why in a second. So he asks, how did you overcome any limitations when your students did not have access to good quality internet connection or because of a lack of IT infrastructure, for example, in Colombian rural regions?
Well, they did have the technology, but they didn't actually use it because our government was kind of providing tablets and computers for them, but the teachers didn't know how to use it, so basically they actually didn't provide them for students as a whole. What we did one time was like to have them access our main building of the binational institution in which I work, and for them was like a dream because the only thing they knew basically was the school they were studying. So for them was like visiting Edmodo headquarters. Basically, should have seen their faces. It was something crazy for them actually.
Okay. Sorry about that. Oh, do we have another question from the audience?
So this is a question. I'm also a school counselor from that perspective. So in my work and my interactions with teachers and people in the community, I always hear, what is this with social media, using technology? Our kids aren't learning how to communicate. How do we work on that? And I'm curious, because it sounds like even what you were saying is that your students learned how to be better writers from this program. And I'm curious from all of you, how did you see this program helping on a broader sense of communication and social skills? Because, you know, it's easy to learn social media social skills, but how has that translated into kind of social skills across the spectrum?
I'll try to upload. I took testimonials for my kids to make the video for Edmodocon, so that's on the topics. What I'll do is I'll try to go upload the individual videos, and then I'll try to put the links on the topic, because I think that may let the kids answer that question for you. Because the students, when you see the passion that my kids speak about with Edmodo, you will want, like, if your teachers see it, they'll want to put it in their class immediately. I've been running around with some videos saying, look at these, it'll be a great commercial for Edmodo, and my kids are not sponsored by Edmodo, you know. So it is. I will post those to the topic, and then the kids maybe can answer that question.
I feel like for me it became a conversation starter. So rather than kids coming in and sitting and just being involved on their iPads until the group got started, they had already been in touch via Edmodo and whatever conversation that was, and then it just continued when they walked back into the club and they were there together. So I just found it actually got some conversation started.
Thank you.
Well, basically my students took it Edmodo as Facebook. So they just adopted it as the same social network they had, and then they started forgetting about their Facebook accounts, and there were actually more Edmodo accounts. I
think that's actually what happened with mine too, because it like I said, it originally started out as English, and then it holistically grew. That they started talking about math, they started talking about science, and then as I was monitoring it, I would go and find YouTube videos and things on the subjects that they needed help on, and post it. Even though I'm not a science teacher, I'm not a math teacher, but if they needed something on the quadratic equation, I would go to YouTube and Google kids and quadratic equation, and then, you know, watch a couple of them, choose the best one, and post it.
That's great. And one final question. This is a great one. I hope we have a chance for it. Kate McCormick from New York, and so maybe you can ask for quick answers. How would you encourage participation, especially from students where school isn't a priority? And how would you encourage parents to participate as well, especially parents who may not be as involved as you'd like them to be in their child's lives?
So maybe you two guys could start with that, because it kind of addresses your target
I just
market.
believe it's consistency more than anything. You have to take a consistent attitude that you're going to be there whether they're coming or not. Like, if they're not going to use the platform or they're not going to answer the questions that I'm trying to get to, that I'm still going to pose them. I'm a big believer in that if they don't want to learn something, I'm going to keep providing them more and more opportunities to do it, and hopefully eventually wear them down, because I'm older and smarter, and not smarter, but older and more used to the process. So just the consistency in being there.
Thank you. Alexander?
Basically, I given the opportunity to the students, like, to be empowered of their own learning and to build their own communities, basically, because that's what they do. And I was actually amazed that one of the students told me if they could ever work at Edmodo. And,
right.
Well, for me, I always says, teacher, why don't we start a small Edmodo here in Manizales? Yes, we could start our company here, and we want to work with you and all that. So they were basically very excited about, like, you know, using the platform like a business, actually.
Great. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate your time.
Yes, and that concludes our panel. I want to thank you all again today. Sandy, thank you so much for being an incredible moderator. We're so lucky to have you and have all of you here. So that wraps right now, and we will see you all in 15 minutes.